Okay, welcome back guys. In our last video we were able to set up the project. We're also able to implement the launch screen, and in this video we're going to work on the onboarding screen. So by the end of this video we're going to have this particular effect, so you can swipe left right through the different pages. You see the different text available in the pages. Then you will also be able to see the next and get started button depending on the particular page that we are. So let's get to it. So yeah, I have my project open right here, and I'm just gonna head over to the main.storyboard because this is where we're gonna be working. And actually I'm gonna do something real quickly. So I'm gonna create a folder, and I'm gonna call this model, because this is where I'm gonna have my different models or structures, as you will. Then I'm gonna create another one that I'm gonna call screens, or maybe we should call this scene, I guess, or views, whatever you want to call it. But this is gonna be our different pages of the application. Then I'm also gonna create a custom views, even though we may not need this right now. Custom views, and I guess for now this works. Now in our onboarding, in our views, I'm gonna create the onboarding folder, because that's like a page on its own. So new group, and onboarding is the name. All right, now in our onboarding view or screen, I want to have my onboarding view controller. So right there I'm gonna hold down Command N, or you can do File and New. Then I'm gonna select Cocoa Touch class, and then UI view controller. Then here I'm gonna call this onboarding. Make sure language is Swift. I don't even know Objective-C. So click on next. Make sure the target is selected. We're creating this in the onboarding folder. So create, and we have that right over here. Let's get rid of all of these junk. Sweet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the view controller to this particular class. So head over and first delete this guy because we're not going to be using this. So head over to your main.storyboard, and if you remember how to connect, you make sure this is selected. Then go to your identity inspector, and it was initially view controller. So now we got to change this to onboarding view controller. And now both of these guys are connected. Great. Now let's get started with the actual design. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to be using a collection view to handle the different pages. So I'm going to drag in a collection view right here, from the top to the bottom. Good. So yeah, something I guess like this should be good for now. So the next thing we're gonna need is a button. So let's click and drag a button right down here, and finally we're gonna need a page control. So page control, and this is just like it tells us what particular page that we are. So click, drag, put it right here. So for the button, I'm gonna give this a width of about 150 and a height of 50. Then I'm going to constraint this to, let's say, 40 to the bottom. All right, and we need to center align this guy. So center horizontally. So good, we have our button set. Next thing we need to do is to position our page control. So this again is going to need to be is going to need to have center alignment with the view. So center horizontally in safe area as well. And we're going to constraint this guy to let's say about 16 pixels, or 16 to the bottom. So the next thing I'm going to do is, even though it's not very important, but let's change the text of the button, and then we're going to need to change the color of our button, not the text color but the background color. So I'm going to be using a dark color, very close to black. So let's just click on custom, and let's head over here, click on black, and maybe also we don't want it to be this dark, so let's see, just scroll like this. Alright, this seems pretty good. So next we're going to change the color of the text to white. So how do we do that again? Text color, simple enough, white. Great. So yeah, this looks good. So the next thing I'm going to do here is to add a color right here for the current page. So I want it to be red, or basically like our app theme color. So that, and for the tint color, like the other colors, we're going to just simply use, I need something light. So let me see, light gray. That looks too dark. Let's go for let's see, system gray 5. Alright, this looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. So now we're going to add constraint for our collection view so that it you know, matches the rest, and I'm going to use 0 like this. Alright, so we have our collection view, we have our page control, we have our next button, or our button. Alright, so what I'm going to do next actually is to connect these guys to our view controller. So just click on this place in assistant, get the assistant editor, and we're going to create outlets for all of these what's it even called, widgets or whatever. So collection view, I'm going to hold down control click drag to the view controller and call this collection view. We're going to do the same thing for the button. Now we're going to need to, or we're going to be changing the text of the button, so that's why I'm trying to create an outlet. If we don't need to do that, most likely not, like create an outlet. Right, so I'm gonna call this next button like that, and finally we're gonna have the page control like that, and I'm gonna call this page control. Sweet. Then we're gonna need to drag an action. So whenever you click on the next button, we want to execute a particular function. So I'm gonna call this next button clicked, and it's a UI button. We're going to connect. Great, so now we have all of these things connected. The next thing I'm going to do is I actually want to add corner radius to this, and there are different ways that we can do this. We can, of course, head over to our identity inspector and then add the corner radius like this, or we could also just do that in our view controller class. But I know I'm going to be using this, or I may be using this often, so rather than having that, I want to create it as a property over here, right, so that we can easily set the corner radius from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an extension. I'm going to create an extension group here, and I'm going to create an extension for UI views, right? So we're going to select Swift file and say UI view, and I'm just going to say extension like that. So now we're going to create an extension of the UI view, but before we have access to UI view, we need to import the UI kit. Sweet. So now we're going to be creating a property called corner radius, and this is going to be of type CG float, and we're going to specify a get and a set. Right. Now for the get property, what we're going to do is we're going to return the corner radius, and for the set we're going to say self.layer.corner radius, and this is going to be equal to the new value, whatever was set as the corner radius. Alright, now finally, for us to have this guy show up in our storyboard, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say at IB inspectable. So this is I'm going to show you what it's going to do. So yeah, we can actually close this out, and in our storyboard I have my button selected, and right here you can see that now we have a corner radius property, and we can simply specify the corner radius. So I'm just going to use 10, and let's go ahead and run this, and hopefully we have this exact design, as complicated as it is. So our launch screen is good, and of course we have our corner radius button, we have the page control, we have our collection view right here. So yeah, let's go ahead and implement the collection view, or the page slider itself. So what I'm gonna do first of all is I'm gonna create a model, and I'm gonna call this, right in our models folder, I'm gonna call this OnboardingSlide, because I want this to hold the different values that we need for our onboarding screen. So first we need to create a struct, and we're gonna need to specify the name, of course. So OnboardingSlide, good. And this slide has a title, it has a description, and you know, we can actually just use the same string and use commas to separate these things, but well, I like typing, I guess. And the image as well is going to be a UI image. So again, we need to import UIKit for that to make sense. So yeah, cool. Now we have our onboarding slide. The next thing we're going to need to do is to head over to our view controller, our onboarding view controller in our views, and we're going to need to create an array right here, and I'm just going to call this slides, and this array is going to be of type onboarding slide. Initially it's going to be empty. Cool. Now let's head back to the main.storyboard and implement the design for the slide. So head over to your main.storyboard, and we're going to drag this down. It doesn't really matter yet because we're going to specify the size of this thing in our code, but just drag it as much as you want or as little as you want. So now in our slide, in every page, the first thing we see very clearly is that we have a UI view. So I'm going to drag one like that. Then also we have like two texts, the title and the description. So I'm going to drag a label right in here, and I'm going to set this to, so this is going to be our title, so I can just quickly write something quick, delivery at your doorstep. Cool. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's make this like 31. Yeah, I guess this looks good, and I'm gonna create a second one, a second label, and the color is cool, so we can use that. And this second label is going to be is gonna have a color of gray. So let's head over to, where's that? Let's do light gray. Light gray. Yeah, I guess it's okay. Or we could use something a little bit darker. Nah, light gray is cool. So we're gonna use light gray, and I'm gonna reduce the size a bit. 15 should be okay. So I'm gonna put both of these guys into a stack view. So remember how we did that in our launch screen, embed in a stack view. Cool. So it actually made this a horizontal stack. So I'm going to select vertical, and I'm going to put a spacing of about 16 pixels and drag it in here. Cool. So now let's add constraints. So I'm going to use can make this 0, make this 16, 16, and 16. Alright, cool. And finally, we're going to need to add constraint to the image as well. So this is going to be 0, 0, 0, and the other one is cool. Alright, so we are getting there. So I need both of these texts to wrap. So I'm going to set the maximum or the line height to be 0 for both of them, 0 like that. And let's actually add something that makes sense over here. I'm going to say home delivery and online reservation system for, I'm actually reading this from somewhere, so for restaurants and cafes. Restaurants, should I? Oh, well, restaurants and cafes. Alright, so this looks very weird. Why is that? Well, just click on your stack view and let's make sure that the alignment is correct. So I need center, so that is cool. And I actually need both these texts to be center aligned as well. So now this looks a bit okay. It looks pretty good. Right, so now we have our collection view designed very well. The next thing we're going to need to do is to connect this design to a collection view cell class. So in our onboarding folder, I'm going to hold down Command N, and we're going to be creating a collection view cell. So I'm going to call it onboarding again. Did I spell that correctly? Yep. And this time it's going to be a UI collection view cell. So we're going to click on next and create. So now we have the cell created. We're going to need to connect this guy to the view in our main.storyboard. So click on that, make sure you click on collection view, head over to the identity and paste that over there. Did that not work? Why? Pardon me. Get to the cell, not the collection view, right? So collection view cell, that's what we created, and head over to the what's this called? Attribute, no? Yeah, attributes, and then the identifier, the reuse identifier, need to set that, and we're going to be using the same exact name, and we're going to see that in a bit, or the reason in a bit. So now we have this connected. What we're going to do next is we're going to open up the attributes, or the assistant editor rather, and we're going to go to I need to get to this guy, so I'm just going to hold down Command Shift and O, and then I'm going to type onboarding. So I want the collection view cell, so I'm going to hold down Command, I think it's Command, no, it's supposed to be Option, pardon me. So hold down that again, hold down Option, click on this, beautiful. So if you hold down Option, it's going to open it like this. So yeah, now we can go ahead and drag the outlets to our class. So the first one we have here is the image view. I'm going to call this slide image view. Next we have the title, and this is I'm going to call this slide title label. And finally our description, which I'm going to call slide description label. Alright, so yeah, this looks good. Next, I'm going to create a function, a setup function. It's just something I like to do. So head over to your collection view cell, and I'm going to create a function. Just need one space. I'm going to call this setup. Now our setup function is going to be expecting a slide, which is of type OnboardingSlide. Right, so now we're going to need to populate the fields. So we're going to say slide or slide image view dot image is going to be equal to the slide dot image, as you guessed. The same thing for the title. Title dot text is going to be equal to slide dot title. I can see the benefit of using a structure. Everything is well. What's the word? I don't know. So finally we have the description label. The text is going to be equal to slide dot description. So now we have our onboarding collection view completely set up. So we can, of course, head over to the onboarding view controller, and then I guess this is where we're gonna do and work some magic. Before then, there's one more thing that is actually very important, but I'm gonna hold off. So let's see, maybe we can discover that, or discover it while discovering the problem. What am I saying? So anyhow, so what I'm going to do is right at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to create an extension of this exact same class. So onboarding view controller, like that, view controller, and this is going to conform to the UI collection view delegate and the UI collection view data source. And for both of these guys to actually be triggered, we need to set the delegate to self. Now there are two ways we can do that. We can actually come over here and say collection view.delegate equals self, then collection view.dataSource equals self. Right? We can do it like this. An alternative is to head over to the main.storyboard, and I guess I like to do this. May not be the better option, but I just like to do it. So just click on this icon right here and go to this one, I don't know what's called, Connections Inspector. Click on that, and you're gonna find click on the collection view. Why did I make that mistake? So yeah, click on the collection view, and right here you're gonna see the data source for the collection view and the delegate. So you can just click and drag to this icon right here. So it's like you're connecting it to the class. So you can do it like this, click for the delegate as well, and this is connected, and now we're not going to need to specify this. Alright, so yeah, you have these two options, then go ahead and choose whatever option you prefer. So now we're conforming to this. We need to implement the methods that are necessary. So the first one we're going to use is the number of, we're going to be using number of items in section, and as you probably guessed, we are going to count that from our slides. So we're going to say return slides.count, and the next thing we're going to need is a cell for item at index, and here we're going to be returning the onboarding collection view cell that we have created. So we're going to say let's cell be equal to collection view dot dequeue reusable cell with identifier. So this is the option that we need. So I'm going to click on that. Let's actually remove this for now. So yeah, now what exactly is our identifier? So we can, of course, head over to the collection view and create a static label. Let's do that at the absolute beginning. So I'm going to say static let identifier be equal to string. Well, we could actually use the name. We could actually just write the name of the class, which was what we set as the reusable identifier on the storyboard, if you remember. But also you can also write describing, what am I spelling here? This dot self. So this is basically going to use this. It's going to convert this to a string and use it. Yeah, just going to convert it to a string and use it. So whichever method you prefer, you know, you can decide to write it like that in strings. But well, okay. So yeah, now we have our identifier. Let's head back to the onboarding view controller. And here we can simply just call the name of the class and pass in identifier like that. And here we're going to have index path. This is coming from here, and we're going to cast this as a this. And finally, we're going to return cell. Pretty good. All right. So the last thing we're going to need to do is for every cell, we need to set it up, right? So we have a function in our cell called setup that expects a slide or a slide of type onboarding slide, and we have that in our array of slides. So I'm going to say slides, and we're getting the index path dot row. Awesome. So this is going to pass every slide to the collection view cell, and that is going to populate the label, the image, and the description, the title, label, and description. Alright, so I think we can actually go ahead and run this, but in order for us to make sure that it actually works, I'm going to add some data to our slides. And actually I'm just going to copy what we already have to avoid typing everything from scratch again. So I'm going to do that over here. I can actually just change the value. It doesn't really matter. Whatever choice you make is completely fine. Well, let's actually keep things neater and say slides equals and an array like this. So this contains all of our icons. This is the first slide, and the text, the title, and the description. The second slide, the title and the description as well, and finally the third. So when we run this, we expect that we see a collection view with 3 items. Let's see if we're on the same page. Alright, so yeah, we can see that we have 3 different pages and the texts are actually populated. Pretty good, but it looks very weird, so it means that we still have a lot of work, well, some work to do in our collection view. So let's head back to the main.storyboard, and the first thing we noticed is it scrolls vertically rather than horizontally. So I'm going to click on the collection view and get this guy back up, head over to the attributes, and we're going to look for the scroll direction and change that to horizontal. Alright, so now this is going to be a horizontal scroll. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the indicators. So I don't want to have any kind of lines showing up when we're sliding. Then I think now we can go ahead. Okay, one more thing is to make it scroll in a paginated way. So while you're scrolling, it should just show different pages. So now let's try and see the corrections that we've made and what it looks like. So now it scrolls like this, pretty good, and you notice that it's now scrolling like pages. It's not a smooth scroll. So yeah, that's good. So now the next thing we need to actually work on is to give it a proper width and height. So we're gonna head over to, before we head over to the view controller, I'm gonna come over here, make sure the collection view is selected, and I'm gonna change the estimated size to be none. I don't want it to estimate any size. I'm gonna pass in the exact size that I wanted to use. So now we can head over to the view controller, and I'm gonna implement another delegate, another protocol, and this is gonna be called UI collection view delegates flow layout. Alright, and this allows us to implement a method that specifies size for size for item at index path. Alright, and right here what we're going to be returning is a CG size. So CG size that expects a width and a height. So the width is going to be the width of the collection view. So I'm going to say collection view dot frame. I missed the spelling. Collection view dot frame dot width, and the height as well. Well, the height is going to be the exact same thing. Collection view dot frame dot height. So now let's try this, and hopefully it should look a little bit better. Alright, so now we have it's showing our image, it's showing this, but it isn't showing the text as it should. So we have instant worldwide delivery, but it's not showing up in the previous pages. So let's see why that is happening. I'm going to head back to this place and let's make sure that the constraint is good. Okay, so we have the constraint set up properly. I'm thinking let's click on the collection view. It's actually a strange one, and I'm thinking maybe there's a padding somewhere. So I'm gonna change the cells, the spacing line and cell spacings to 0, and let's see if this actually makes any difference. Nope, it still does not, but at least now this looks well aligned. So it's showing the text for the last one, but it's not showing for the others. Why is that? So let's try something else. I'm thinking maybe let's try fill. Right? Let's try to fill this. I'm not sure why that's happening actually. Still doesn't work. I'm also going to, because I can see that the text is being set, but for some reason it isn't. Let me add some constraints and see if that does anything for us. Can you imagine that? Well, I didn't expect that I needed to do this, but I guess this is a learning curve for us. And I can see that the icon looks a bit, well, maybe not a little bit blurry, but usually what I like to do is in my assets folder, I like to move all of the icons to the middle, right? So it is, you know, a little bit more balanced, I guess. So hopefully this makes a difference. I don't know, maybe not, but yeah, I like to do that. So so now that it actually works, well, I learned as well. So okay, so I don't like this, so I'm gonna change this. Instead of using the fill, let's actually fill proportionally, and let's see if that makes a better difference. Alright, so I guess this looks pretty good now. This looks pretty good. Alright, so now we have our, let's actually make this darker. Pardon me, guys. I like all those small things. So I'm going to use medium. Sweet. So what we're going to do next is when you run the application, so when you run the app and you try to scroll, we want the text, the indicator right here to change as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get back to the onboarding view controller, and we're going to need to implement a particular delegate that allows us to know when scroll has occurred. So right here we're going to implement a method scroll did and decelerating. So this is when it has finished scrolling. So what we're going to do here is we're going to calculate the width of the page. So width is going to be equal to the scroll view dot frame dot width. And then in order for us to know the current page, which is going to be assigned to a variable, or well, we can make this a global variable. So the initial, because we're going to need this page, so current page is going to be equal to 0. Alright? It's an integer. So our current page here is going to be an int, and we're going to say scroll view dot content offset, not in, offset dot x, so in the x axis, and we're going to divide this by the width of our scroll view, and this is going to give us the current page. Right. So the next thing we're going to need to do is to also update the page control. So we're going to say page control dot current page is going to be equal to, of course, our current page. So let's try this now and see what we have. So now we have the first one. Nice, it scrolled, it went. Nice. So we already have that working pretty well. So I'm gonna deactivate this guy. I don't want the user to be able to click on this. We could actually handle this, so when you click on this it takes you to the exact page, but I'm not just gonna do that here. I prefer that you only scroll and or click on the next button. So let's get back to the main.storyboard and click on the page control, and what we're going to do is set the user interaction to be disabled. Cool. So now we're almost there actually. So now when we scroll, we want to know the current page and want to know whether or not we need to set the text to be next or get started. Okay, so back to the onboarding view controller, and that's actually why I made this global. What I want to do is right here, I want to use the did set property to know when this value is changed. So we could alternatively just have maybe a function right here that says update button text or something, but you know, there are many ways to implement it, so feel free to use whatever method you prefer. But I'm just trying to, you know, touch every many things that we've learned in past tutorials, just put them into use. All right, so now in our did set, what we're going to do is we're going to check the current page. So if the current page is equal to our slides.count -1, so this simply means that we are on the last page. What we want to do is say next button dot set title to be what? Get started. For what control? Normal. Otherwise, the value of the button should be what? Next. So set title is going to be next, the control is going to be normal. So now we can of course go ahead and run this and everything should be good. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So now we have our first page. Click or you slide, it's still next. You slide again, now it is get started. We go back. Oh, pretty good. So now when you click on the next button, we need to actually perform the slide. So what we're going to do is right here in our function, we're going to get the index that we want to slide to. So, and this is actually one of the benefits of using a collection view. So we're going to say let index or index path be equal to index path, and we're going to use this option right here that has item and section. So the item where we want to move to is the current page, and the section is going to be 0, of course. Now that we have our index path, we're going to need to say collection view dot scroll to item at, and then we're going to pass in our index path. Then the position, we can set whatever we want because it's actually the full width of the screen. So I'm just going to say center horizontally or left, whatever you want. And we want to animate this, of course. We love animations. So we're going to test this out and see if it actually does what we expect. So we click on next, nothing happens, nothing happens. Why is that? Well, we need to update our page. So we didn't update the page that we want to scroll to. So what I need to do here is say current page should be equal to what plus equals 1. So we want to increment the value of the current page, and let's try it now and see if it works. So now we click on the next button and it actually scrolled. Next. So this shouldn't happen. On the get started part, we want to go to the next page. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an if statement here that checks the current page. So we want to check if the current page is equal to slides.count -1. Right? Meaning you are on the last page. So if you are on the last page, we want to go to the next page. If you are not, then we want to do this. So you can actually just have this inside here as well. And we're going to add a print statement here saying go to the next page. Great. So let's run this now and see if it works well. So we have next, and get started. So if I click on this, you can see that now we have go to the next page, and it works well. But I also noticed that whenever we click on the next button, when you slide, it actually affects this, but when you click on the next button, it does not affect the page control. So what we can do is we could decide to move this particular line of code right into, what did I just copy? Oh yeah. So we're going to move that into the current page. So here we have current page being updated. So whenever you change the value of the current page, we want to also update the page control using the new value of the current page. So I'm going to run that now, and both the slide should update and the next button as well should also update the page control. And that works pretty nice. So finally, what we want to do is when you click on Get Started, we want to open up a second page, which is going to be the home page of our application. Now, if you remember, we have actually talked about this in a past video. I guess I'll leave a link to many of the videos that explain the concepts we're using in each of the videos. I'm going to head over to the main.storyboard and I'm going to create a second page. But this time around, this is going to also be embedded in a navigation controller. So, of course, hold down this and just get View Controller, like that. And we're going to put that over here. Then we're going to embed this in a, how do we even do that again? So click on this, make sure it's selected, and yeah, navigation controller like that. So it's going to add this, it's going to embed, pardon me, this is going to embed the view controller in a navigation controller. So now let's go ahead and connect this, and also we need to give this guy a an identifier, right? So I'm going to click on this, and right here I'm going to call this, or give this a storyboard ID of home VC or home NC as home navigation controller. Alright, so yeah, next we can go back to the view controller, and actually let's do it the conventional way for now. Later on I'm going to show you the one I have planned. Alright, so controller is going to be equal to storyboard.instantiate with view controller with identifier, and this is going to be the home navigation controller. So this is of type navigation controller, so I'm going to type that and cast that as a UI navigation controller. So the next thing we're going to need to do is to present the controller. So what I'm going to say is present, and then, and notice my fingers are typing something else. I'm saying another thing. So animation is true. I don't need to know when it is completed. So let's actually run this and see if this works fine. So next, and get started. Alright, so it actually worked very well, but the final thing I'm going to do here is to change the transition and make this guy full screen. Right? So how do we do that? Right here we have access to the controller, and we can simply modify the presentation style. So model presentation style, and this we're going to make full screen. Then finally we're going to do the transition style like that, and we're going to make this to flip horizontally. Did I get that? Confirm that's the animation I want. Yep. So you can also choose whatever animation you want. You saw that page curl. You can do whatever you prefer. So get started. Yeah. So now this brings us to the end of this particular video. In the next video, we're gonna create the structure or the template of our home screen. All right. So we're gonna set the title. We're gonna set the navigation styling. Going to do the collection view and scrolls and all of those things in the next video. Alright, see you guys then.